Chapter 6. Selecting employees and placing them in jobs. LOs. Identify the elements of the selection process. Define ways to measure the success of the selection method. Summarize the government's requirements for employee selection. Require the common methods used for selecting human resources. Describe major types of employment tests. Discuss how to conduct effective interviews. Explain how employers carry out process of making selection decisions. Personnel selection. So the process through which organizations decide who will and will not be invited to join the organization begins with identifying candidates through recruitment. Number of applicants is reduced to best qualified individuals. Ends with selected individuals placed in jobs. So this is the process, and when it goes from start to finish. So when you see this is what you call full cycle hiring. Full cycle when it comes to the recruitment process, from the time there were candidates to applicants, and then selected into the job. Applicant tracking system automates selection process of online applications. Allows managers to track candidate information and hiring outcomes. So one of the things too, when you're recruiting people and they become candidates and applicants and they get hired, you want to keep up with your data, and for all types of reasons, to figure out who you hire, when you hire, what you hire, what you get, what's the outcome, what's the attrition rate, a lot of different things. Who started the process, who's making it through, did you see any trends or whatsoever? So the first thing you do is screening applicants and resumes. This is something, particularly when I think in terms of this, I think in terms of what I did with the federal government when I was in the recruitment and the hiring process. This is exactly like what we did, screening applicants and resumes. The first thing they would do, they would come to me for North and South Carolina, and I would go through them. Testing and reviewing work samples. This is something that was be done once they actually got to the interview process for us. And then these interview candidates, they get interviewed. When they get interviewed, you have to figure out what type of process. A lot of times what you'll find is they'll have multiple interviews or whatever else, but this will be the first one. Check your references and background. And then once they clear that, and then making a selection. So this is really describing like a traditional government hiring process. Elective selection systems. So support job descriptions. Provide ability to run background checks and store information, documents, and applicant information. Allow the hiring manager and HR and job candidate to coordinate interview schedules. Set up to help identify applicants with necessary KSAOs. So when you're getting this process, you're getting it started. There's something that, these applicants have to understand, that there's going to be a background check process. You got to meet with the HR and the managers. You got to work with the candidates and stuff, because sometimes you're talking about a lot of candidates and stuff to try to coordinate interviews, and that can be something that can be very difficult too, depending upon what you have there. And obviously, you got to identify with the KSAOs with all the applicants, and this is really something you're looking at even in the application or doing the reviewing the resume process. For employees who work directly with customers, companies should create a selection process that measures employees' interest in customers and their ability to interact in a positive way. So if you have somebody who's going to be interacting with customers, they have to have people skills. I'll be honest with you, it would be almost equivalent to taking someone who's a traditional engineer or a tech person who only works with numbers and put him out here trying to work with people. It will probably cause you to start losing business, because that's not that person's strong suit. That person's strong suit are analytical skills, not interpersonal skills. So you have to make sure you get the right type of people. Successful selection method provides reliable information, provides valid information. Information can be generalized to apply to candidates, offers high utility, practical value, includes criteria that are legal. So when you're looking at this successful selection method, you're getting information that's valid. It's not what a hunch or what people think or how people feel. No, it's valid information, and you can show why it's valid, and you can rely on that information anytime you go into a process. And it has to be legal. If you have a process in place and it's not legal, particularly if it's something that's related with any type of government, because if you don't, it can have legal repercussions. You can incur some legal liability and exposure. Reliability, the extent to which measurement is free from random error. A reliable measurable generates consistent results. Statistics like correlation coefficients are used to compare results and determine reliability. Determines whether measurements are accurate. Does not determine what is being measured matters. So realistically, you say reliability is something that can be measured and is consistent. We can use these steps right here, and it's going to tell us this. No matter how many different processes we do this right here, it's going to tell us this. That's what you want to have. Validity, to the extent to which the performance or measure test score relates to the measure is trying to assess job performance. Strong correlation between a measure and job performance indicates that it is a valid basis for candidate selection. 3 ways to measure: a criterion-related validity, content validity, construct validity. So when you're looking at these different types of ways, of measuring, these again, and I am going to tell you, not only is it really primarily about trying to make sure that you're doing something on a consistent basis that makes it as valid. It makes it, because always in the back of HR's mind too is we have to do things that we can say if someone tries to litigate us based on a job or them not getting a job, we have to be able to go to court and stand up and show them that there was no wrongdoing. This is the process that we use. The applicant just didn't make it through and was not considered the best candidate. Criterion-related validity. Based on showing a substantial correlation between test scores and job performance scores. 2 kinds of research use. Predictive validation uses test scores of all applicants and looks for a relation between the scores and the future performance of those who were hired. Concurrent validation administers a test to people who currently hold a job, then compares those scores to existing measures of job performance. So one of the things you'll find is one of the predictive is one a lot of times you're going to use this is when you're trying to hire people. Concurrent validation is one that you use primarily when you have people who are already on board, maybe possibly seeking promotions. Measurements of students' aptitude. So you look at this right here and see you have a intelligence test score, college GPA. And so what they're trying to do is trying to draw a correlation between the two. And for some jobs, that could be very important. But you want to get to the point where you understand exactly, when this is appropriate to use. Content validity, consistency between test items and the kinds of situations or problems that occur on the job. Computer role-playing games involving situations that occur on the job. So this is something right here. This is trying to determine, are you getting somebody in a position where they know how to think like people who've been successful in this job? And that will be why the role play will come in, because it's looking at really the decision making in certain types of situations. Construct validity, used for tests that measure abstract qualities of constructs. Establishes that tests concurrently accurately measures the construct. Shows association between construct and job success. So here again, you're looking at it and you're trying to compare this, before you bring somebody on board. Is there a high probability that this person could be successful in the job? Ability to generalize. Selection method should be generalized. Applies in other context other than one in which it was developed. Applicable to other organizations, jobs, and applicants. So when you have this right here, let's say that you have 10 different jobs, but you have a generalized selection process that you can use for all 10 of them. Practical value. Selection method should produce information that is actually beneficial to the company. Testing and interviewing should cost significantly less than benefit of hiring. Methods that provide economic value greater than cost of using them are said to be utility. Selection method may differ based on the job being filled. So you got to look at, selection method should produce information that is actually beneficial to the company. Why are we testing them? This will tell us this. Testing and interviewing should cost less than the benefit of actually hiring. And also, that you got to use a selection method, and different selection methods may be needed because you have different jobs to fill. Give you an example. Would you want to use the same selection method for somebody who was actually in sales for your company that you use to select engineers or tech people or IT folks? Legal standards for selection. So when it comes to that, you have the Civil Rights Act of 1991. You have the Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1967. You have American Disabilities Act of 1991. We have the Fair Credit Reporting Act. The Equal Employment Opportunity laws affect the kinds of information organizations can gather on forums and in interviews. So in the process, when you have a hiring process, all these different acts, these laws, these are federal laws, by the way, that you must take in consideration. And this is where your HR professionals will make sure that we are conducting a hiring process that abides by all these federal statute laws. Permissible and impermissible questions for questions for applicants and interviews. So you look at this right here. Give an example. This is something, and I won't read through all of these. You can read through them as leisure. But what is your full name? Have you ever worked under a different name? You can do that. Here's something you can ask. What was your name? What's your nationality of your name? And when people start asking those kind of questions, you got to be really careful, because these are the ones over here, impermissible questions can get you sued. Here again, here are some others. I'll let you read through those. I'll give you an example. One that consistently come up is, you cannot ask a female applicant, would you be willing, do you plan to take maternity leave, if you're not asking men the same thing. And here's another one. What is your marital status? Would you like to be addressed as, you can't get, do you plan on having any children? You can't get into those kind of things. Selection process, legal standards for selection, candidates' privacy rights. Information gathered during selection may include information that candidates consider confidential. Employers should only collect data using secure platforms. So when you're gathering this type of information, you got to make sure that people's rights are protected, and their privacy is protected, because particularly if you're applying for certain types of jobs, like particularly jobs with the federal government and things in law enforcement and things along those lines, you got to make sure. But even in private industry, nonprofits, you still got to check everybody's privacy. Immigration Reform Control Act of 1986. Employers must verify and maintain records on applicants' legal rights to work. So you got to look at this. You got to look at this and determine: are you hiring people who legally can work? State laws pay inquiry bans, forbid employers from asking about pay history. May be illegal to ask about arrest or conviction records, depending upon what the situation is. Polling question. Which interview question is legally permissible? I'll let you take a look at that. Pause and take a look at that. Did you get it right? Here's your answer. Low-cost way to gather basic information. So, application forms. When you create a large volume of work for the organization, software used to analyze contents and identify applicants will meet criteria. So you got to have a way. Once you get all these, let's say you have hired a lot of people, you got to have a way to kind of weed through the ones who are actually not even qualified at all. And 4 areas of information. You got 4 areas of contact information, work experience, educational background, applicant signature. These are some of the things that you're looking for on these application forms. Resumes submitted by applicant to introduce himself. Applicants control content and presentation. Drawback: information is biased and sometimes inaccurate. Inexpensive way to gather information used as the basis to determine which candidates to investigate further. Resumes review is most valid when evaluated in terms of elements of job description. I personally enjoyed doing this because when I was reviewing resumes, I could tell right quick if someone's qualified. Even if somebody was actually not being truthful or tried to fudge or whatever else, it didn't matter. I could still weed through most of that because I understood what our job was, and I understood. But if you were applying for our job, you had to have the type of job that was actually even relevant. So what are you doing that's relevant in that job? References. And you have references. References are what applicants provide to potential employers and stuff. With contact information, people who can talk about their character, past performance, and things along those lines. Bias. Applicants choose people who will say positive things. They really do. Usually check when a candidate is a finalist for the job. Now, one of the things the federal government do is they will also do something they refer to as unsolicited references. They will check the references that applicant provides before they hire, but they will also see if they can cultivate some on their own, or people who might know the applicant that they didn't list, to see if they can find out anything about them as well. Background checks. So when you get into the background checks, this is where you get into verification, checking that, first off, criminal histories, checking their background, checking their driver record, checking their credit, criminal checks. All these things you're trying to look at. And if they've had multiple names, you're running it under multiple names. And sometimes you will find applicants who don't tell the truth about something. And a lot of times, this is where it's found, in the background check. Two broad categories of employment tests. Aptitude tests. It assesses how well somebody can learn and acquire skills. Achievement tests measure a person's existing knowledge and skills. Civil service exams. So when we talk about civil service exams, we're talking about the government type stuff. And bottom line, with the aptitude test, you can find those in corporate America. It says how well a person can learn, acquire skills, abilities, and knowledge. So here are some sources right here you can read on your own at your leisure. Sources of information about employment tests. And one of the things I do tell people is this: before you take a standardized employment test, find out, can you prepare for it? There are some tests that you can't prepare for. And I'll give you an example, like a personality test, a psychological test and stuff. You might kind of find some where they may ask you stuff, but at the end of the day, you can't change your personality. Physical ability tests. This is what you'll find a lot of times for jobs, for certain jobs. Definitely military, law enforcement, things along those lines and stuff. Firefighters, because you have to perform a certain physical duties and stuff and tasks and stuff. Even if you include people who do things like who work on electric power lines and things along those lines. And certain people would be excluded from this if they're just physically unfit, or if they have disabilities, or they're women that are not strong enough to lift 50 pounds. There's certain jobs, and that's not discriminatory. It's saying if you can't do these things, you can't do this job because you have these, either you're just not big enough, you're not strong enough, or you have a disability that will keep you from doing it. Cognitive ability tests, designed to measure verbal skills, quantitative skills, and reason ability skills, sometimes called intelligent tests. Valid and relatively low cost. Pose legal risks, especially when it comes to race. You get into things such as race norming and banding and things along those lines. Grouping everybody together. If they're black, they're not going to do well on this. You can't do things like that. You can't say things like that. And you got to be careful about this when you get into tests where you're trying to measure this. Job performance tests and work samples. Specialized skills needed for a job to be tested. Showing samples of work, completing a project, or in a basket test. Tests for selected managers make their take form assessment center. Leads applicants to fill The evaluation is fair since they have a chance to showcase the skills. Helps avoid discrimination since focuses on skills, not credentials. So this is where you're actually saying, well, let's see if you know how to do this. That's really what they're saying. Do you know how to do this? And either you do or you don't. Personality inventories. You have your big 5 traits used as a basis for assessing personality. Extroversion, adjustment, agreeableness, conscientious, inquisitive. So when you look at these, let me tell you the next slide and show you, talk more about those. So extroversion, so socially gregarious, assertive, talkative, expressive. So these are the kind of people you think of who are outgoing, like sales reps, people who are doing things for promoters, marketing. Adjustment, emotionally stable, non-depressed, secure, and content. Agreeableness, courteous, trusting, good-natured, tolerant, cooperative, and forgiving. These people make good folks like customer service. Conscientious, dependable, organized, persevering, thorough, achievement-oriented. And a lot of times you find people like this, and it might be, a lot of times I find people like this make good leaders and managers. Inquisitive, curious, imaginative, artistically sensitive, broad-minded, and playful. These are the kind of people, to me, that make good investigators because they're curious and they're inquisitive. And imaginative, one of the ways is that comes in handy when you figure out different types of ways to do and different types of investigations to apprehend criminals. Employment tests and work samples. Honesty tests and drug tests. Organizations want people to be honest. So you're looking about the polygraph. And what the polygraph is designed to do is, I tell people who take the polygraph some people think it's designed to get you. No, it's not. It's designed to see if you lie. Even if they ask you a question and you think it may hurt you if you're taking a polygraph, just tell the truth. People get tripped up because they lie more often in the polygraph than actually the fact that they actually done something that kicks them out of the process. And I give you an example. You can have somebody take the polygraph and they think, well, I can't tell them this because if I tell them that, they won't give me the job. So they lie about it. And then after the test is over, they found out later on that actually wouldn't have got them kicked out of the process. But what got them kicked out is the fact they lied about it. Rules for administering drug tests. Test all applicants for the same job. Use testing for jobs that involve safety hazards. Send a report of results to applicant. Include information how to appeal. Keep results confidential. Respect applicants' privacy. So everybody's treated the same everybody who applies for this job. They all get the same drug test. Medical examinations, and you're going to have these for jobs that are going to require you to do things like the military, law enforcement, firefighting, things along the line, and they have to, because they have to find out, are you physically capable of meeting the demands of the job? And I give you an example. If you have someone that's required to do a lot of walking, but he's got a bad knee, he's medically not fit and stuff. I mean, his knee won't allow him to walk a lot. So he may fit all other aspects of the job, but in a medical exam, they're going to disqualify him because he has a condition that won't be conducive to standing on his feet and walking long periods of time because his knee is bad. Polling question. Have you ever had to take a test as part of being hired for a job or internship? If so, what kind of test? Here they are listed right here. And you can answer that on your own, which one you took. Interviews, techniques. So you have non-directed interview, open-ended questions. Structured interview, only ask questions that are on the list. Situation interview has high validity. Behavior interview tends to have the highest validity. Panel interview reduces